I started a consultancy at Butler Cox in the 1980s. I ended up in charge of their research operations. They were the biggest IT research and consulting and related consulting firm in Europe at the time. I then moved on and set up my own company called Farringdon Forum Club. That lasted 10 years. I sold it to the Gardner Group in the, when did I sell it? Late 1990s. And then went out to try and see whether some of the ideas that we'd come up with in the Farringdon Forum Club actually worked for change in particular, but also for leadership. So we were starting from scratch, really, looking at outside the IT area and just seeing what's gone wrong. Because leadership's in a mess. It has been in a mess for decades. It's anything you look at, just take a few examples. 70% of change, major change, fails in organizations. People dispute the 70, maybe it's 50 to 70, it doesn't matter. It's awful. We've got a situation where people are basically not engaged to any significant degree in many large organizations today. I mean, I think the last figure I saw said something like 30% of the employees were actively engaged in the business. It's rubbish. It's failure. And then as just looking further on, the whole shindig. Why do people leave organizations? We covered that partly this morning, but that wasn't the answer I expected, because the research says 75% of people who leave large and medium-sized firms do so because of their manager. Full stop. You're still sitting comfortably. Okay, so basically I set out with some ideas from my old company as to how this would work. And in the early part of the 21st century, the 2000s, I worked on 5 big change programs back to back. The first one was Nationwide Building Society. It was a massive IT implementation exercise costing £150 million. It was delivered on time and on budget using some of the ideas. The second one was at National Savings and Investments, which, by the way, is still a massive case study for effective digital transformation. And I'll refer to that if I have time later as well. The third one was the back office of Lloyd's of London. We ended up with 35% productivity improvement, better morale, etc. at the end of it. The Liverpool City Council put in their first call centre way back then, and again, 30% productivity improvement, better morale, better engagement, all those sort of issues. So if I take it from that point of view, something we were doing in the research we did in the late 1990s was actually right. Something was working. I'll talk about how we did it as we move forward. In essence, there is a real problem with leadership development industry. It's massive. I've seen figures ranging between $20 million and $50 million a year to try and solve the leadership problem. It's not working. And there's one fundamental reason why it doesn't work, and this comes out from vast amounts of work done on it. The reason it doesn't work is that changing behaviors doesn't make real influential leaders. Notice I said leaders, not managers. So if you want real influential leaders, don't look to change behaviors. It's nice to have, your morale will go up and you'll have somewhat better culture, etc. But you won't identify a single influential leader as part of that exercise. If I give a few examples of where we came to that conclusion, because it's hugely controversial. I mean, we're saying a $20 billion plus industry is based on sand. Now, the 3 tests, about 7 or 8 tests we used in the end, just try and identify why behavior doesn't generate really effective leaders. And we asked three fundamental questions, really. Basically, what we were saying was that the idea is very seductive. If you're looking at leadership and you're a young, ambitious, bright individual in a large organization, and the organization says to you, it'd be great, we'll develop you, we'll actually put you through, the key thing we're going to do is change your behaviors, make you much more effective as a leader and a manager. And you can do that and you can succeed. Anybody can succeed having your basic skills and intelligence. And because it's not true, you end up with all of disillusion, etc., etc. First test we used in terms of why behaviors don't count is we identified from our network analysis that only one manager in 6 is an effective leader. And this is off a sample of 16 organizations and 50,000 employees going through our tests. 1 in 6. If you had decades of spending $20 billion a year plus trying to create effective leaders, you'd expect it to be a bit more than that. The second one is asking the fundamental question of any manager. If you've been around for a while, you've actually managed more than one group of people. And in that situation, we just ask the question, have you found a difference between those groups in terms of how effective your leadership is, forget your management skills, how effective, what sort of response do people come to you for advice? Do they interact? And there's some groups much easier than others to do that sort of thing. And the answer again is generally yes. Now think about it. If you have these people with superb behaviors, you'd expect to be able to actually have 50, 60, 70% of them being effective leaders. You'd expect that they wouldn't answer yes to that question in terms of, do you find differences in different groups? They have the behaviors that should work everywhere. It doesn't work that way. And the final one is looking at when people leave. The one I mentioned earlier, 75% of them leave because of their manager. These are the people who actually leave. And the reason that we looked at this, and the reason we talk about chemistry in groups, is that if you think of having personal chemistry, which is hugely complicated, it refers to all your experiences through life, at work and outside of work, and you have a personal chemistry. The group or the team you're working with has a number of personal chemistries, but there's also a group chemistry. It's some combination of which person would those people choose as the person that influences them most in their work. And if you apply the tests I've just described to those chemistries, you'll find you'll nod against all of them. Because the chemistry of the individual and the group is a random choice virtually. So you wouldn't expect 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% of them to be influential leaders. Tick that one. The second one, you would expect as you move from job to job or from group to group that the ability to be an effective leader would change, vary. It does.